all of the talk that we're seeing is because Donald Trump, again, a man who lives in a fantasy world. And I'm saying that as an intelligence professional. If this were Burundi, I would say that they had a deranged leader who lives in an alternate reality and thinks that by just saying things, that things will manifest themselves. They do not. We all, the rest of the world, and you and I, we live in real politic, and we have to understand that for every cause there's a reaction, and every reaction there's a counter reaction, and a sequence of events, and follow on chains of consequences. He doesn't believe that. He believes that by his own word, through the strength of his ego, this war will yield two things for him. One, he will be able to raise sanctions on Russia, which is his primary objective was this, in order to gain access to the hundreds of billions of dollars of oligarch money which is stuck in that country. He is just so financially focused for his own personal gain that he is using the position of the United States to do that. And he thought that by, bullying Zelensky, a person who he has personal animosity to, right? I mean, oh, well, because Zelensky would not make a false accusation against Joe Biden and his son, and that in the beautiful phone call got Donald Trump impeached for for the first time as president. And also, he believes Russia. He has been believing Russia since 1987. He is in love with Russian money. And so some people have told him, Steve Witkoff, all of them has said, there's got to be $500 billion of Russian money waiting to flow out to our coffers. And so him viewing that the United States should change the dynamic of the world, which I wrote in a book called The Plot to Destroy Democracy, which had Alexander Dugin, Putin's philosopher, and Steve Bannon, Trump's philosopher, dividing the world up into three poles. Russia would get Europe, the United States would get the Western Hemisphere, and China would get Asia. They're saying this out loud now. So Trump lives within a narrative and a framework and a worldview of Russia that Russia built around him. And so so long as that money's out there, Trump is going to say and do anything to try to get it. The second component is he is insanely jealous of Barack Obama's sort of, undeserved Nobel Prize. Trump has been angling for a Nobel Prize since 1987 when he asked to be the negotiator for the START II nuclear arms talks. And he thought that he would solve this war quickly. The world would have to recognize that he has the greatest art of the deal and that he would have to be given a Nobel Prize. And now those are both escaping him. I suspect that, and Russia, of course, understands this. Putin is a human intelligence officer. He has manipulated Trump for over a decade, got him elected president, quite arguably with the use of Russian intelligence. And he understands that to get Ukraine is to get a president in that will create conditions on the ground that Russia can take over. And in the absence of a ceasefire, they have been demanding that Ukraine have new elections in the war, which is against Ukraine's war constitution, because they think that they can put in another, Yanukovych, another pro-Moscow dictator and Trump would use money as the dangle. Let me tell you something about Ukraine. When I got there, yes, it was a corrupt country and it was, on par with Nigeria and places. The minute that war started, corruption was how can I put it? The most horrible, dishonorable thing you could do in Ukraine. It is a clean country now. Their children are dying. And so to hear this talk offends them personally and deeply. And you have Zelensky, the guy who literally is playing the character from his TV show, right? Servant of the people, showing he is a true Churchill. He is truly a leader that we should all emulate. Trump can't stand that either.
Oh, no, it's fascinating. Zelensky is certainly giving us a real lesson. Briefly, as a final bit, with everything that's going on in the world, in Europe, the Middle East, and China's expansionism, Southeast Asia, are we on a path to global conflict?
That is really a strategic question, right? I mean, a globe-defining question. I don't believe so. I certainly, let's just take all of this crazy talk about World War III and atomic war off the table. Okay. No one's going to be fighting that stuff. All right. Not even close. Look, even India and Pakistan backed off from a border skirmish, and now they've gone back to, kicking their feet up higher at the border crossing, in parades. So that's important that people understand now. And I think with Trump diddling with the global trading system through this almost communist like centralized, dictatorial leader way of seeing things, the world is understanding that trade is based on relationships and cooperation, not conflict and intimidation. And who is eating our lunch? The Chinese. And if you had told me 2 years ago that the Chinese would be the adults in the room, and they're adults because they're playing a long ball game, which is not domination of the Chinese Communist Party as an ideology to take over the world. They are intending to be the number one economic power in the world. And so by doing that, you must limit conflict and establish stability. And Donald Trump, with his animosity towards China, which is just racist, let's be honest, the man is a flaming racist. He is giving China everything they want. I mean, in 100 days, China got what they couldn't get in 20 years, which is the entire world hating America and ready to do business with Beijing and send all of their students to the top 9 schools in the world, which are now in China. And Donald Trump has given that to them with this, sort of weird World War II, pre-World War II-esque pro-Nazi, America First, Charles Lindbergh-like movement that is literally destroying America as a power in this world.
You're looking at what's happened over the last few weeks or months. We've had the memorable ambush of Zelensky by J.D. Vance and POTUS in the Oval Office. And it was suggested to Zelensky that he had no cards to play, I think was an exact quote from
Yeah.
Donald Trump. But he seems to prove that wrong time and time again. The Germans had said Kyiv would fall within days whenever Russia carried out its full-scale invasion. Well, it didn't, and the Russians were pushed back. Then the Ukrainians retook Kherson and Kharkiv when they weren't expected to do that. And now over the weekend, we've seen upwards of a third of the Russian strategic bomber fleet destroyed by one of the most audacious James Bond style attacks that I have ever seen. That is even better than the Israeli Pager attack against Hezbollah. And today we're getting reports of 1.1 tons of TNT blowing up against one of the supporting structures of the Kerch Bridge. And as we're recording this, secondary explosions apparently coming in. We don't know what that's going to lead to.
Right.
What do you make of Zelensky's card game?
He's one of those guys who really knows how to bluff. Taking the slings and arrows of J.D. Vance and Donald Trump in the Oval Office, who, let's be quite honest, the Trump administration in its entirety, all of his senior cabinet members, from Tulsi Gabbard at Intelligence to Tim Waltz at the time and Mike Waltz at the National Security Council, they live in a fantasy bubble about what's going on in Ukraine. Donald Trump says Ukraine is losing the war. All of Ukraine's cities are destroyed. The Russian army is on the march, and it's just a matter of time before they lose. Nothing could be further from the truth. I try to make it clear to my American audiences that to drive across Ukraine, it is 18 nonstop hours driving at 120 kilometers per hour or 160 miles per hour, and it will take you 18 hours to drive across it. The war is in the last 30 minutes of that drive and only in the southeast portion of that country. And Russia cannot win it. Ukraine has the capacity to win it, but you have a 1,000-kilometer long battlefront in which hundreds of people are dying per day. And so Ukraine needs to fight asymmetrically. They need to use the strengths or the weaknesses of their opponent and, like judo, flip them. So, in fact, the characterization of this attack, which has been carried out, Operation Spiderweb, by the SBU, right? This is their version of MI5. is brilliant, but it leverages the fact that Ukrainians and Russians for a very long time under the Soviet Union were fused together as a forced, society. So those SBU officers know where these air bases are, probably picnicked in many of these areas. So by carrying out a long range, deep penetration intelligence operation, very actually, I'm gonna correct you. Unlike James Bond, right? James Bond's a loner. This really required an enormous number of spies in Russia, the logistics chain that they set up to actually assemble, test, develop these weapon systems. Zelensky's card deck is just full of aces, And so for Donald Trump to think that Ukraine had nothing going into his arrival back into the White House just shows the delusion. And, he's got this Putin love thing going on, just shows the delusion that he cannot understand that a smaller nation can take on bigger opponents and really cause damage.
You've been watching Frontline with me, Philip Ingram. If you'd like to be amongst the first to get exclusive content, please subscribe to Times Radio membership at the link below. You can also listen to Times Radio for the latest updates on global affairs or read about them at thetimes.com. Thank you.